Hello and welcome to the Colorado Real Estate Harder Questions Practice Exam. What is not one of the requirements making the use of the Foreclosure Act Addendum mandatory? A residential property. B, must be a short sale. C, a residential property in foreclosure. D, the buyer won't live in the property for at least a year. The answer is B, must be a short sale. The property does not necessarily need to be a short sale. Question number 2. Contracts with original signatures are required: A, if requested. B, at closing. C, 24 hours before closing. D, before title deadline. A, if requested. Hope you got that right. Question 3. The loan is being assumed and there are taxes from the previous year still owed. The closing is set for February 27. The entry on the settlement worksheet would be: A, debit the buyer, credit the seller. B, debit the seller, credit the broker. C, debit the seller, credit the buyer. D, credit the buyer, debit the broker. The answer is C, debit the seller, credit the buyer. This example is an assumed loan when the lender is escrowing for taxes. If taxes are unpaid, usually for a closing before the end of April, charge the seller and credit the buyer. The lender will then pay the taxes out of the escrow when they become due. You will see a large reserve balance to cover this payment. Question 4. When a seller carries back a purchase money mortgage, the entry will be: A, debit the seller, single entry. B, debit the buyer, credit the seller. C, debit the seller, credit the buyer. D, debit the seller, credit the buyer. The answer is D, debit the seller, credit the buyer. This is money that the seller will not get in cash at closing, equal the debit. Money the buyer will not have to bring in cash to closing, equal the credit. Question 5. When completing the exclusive right to sell listing agreement, which monetary encumbrances does the seller list? A, all encumbrances known to seller. B, all encumbrances the seller will not pay off. C, only encumbrances or public record. D, all encumbrances to be assumed by the seller. The answer is all encumbrances known to the seller. Question 6. If an earnest money check is not honored by the buyer's bank, the broker should: A, deposit it again. B, notify the seller and ask what the seller wishes to do next. C, cancel the contract. D, do nothing. The answer is B, notify the seller and ask what the seller wishes to do next. If the earnest money is dishonored, the broker must contact the seller immediately and ask for instructions. Question 7. When must earnest money be deposited in the trust account? A, within 24 hours after the acceptance. B, before closing. C, within 72 hours after the notice of acceptance. D, whenever notice is given. The answer is C, within 72 hours after the notice of acceptance. Question 8. A Colorado associate broker can collect compensation from: A, his or her employing broker. B, a satisfied customer. C, commission from a previous employing broker from a closed transaction before transfer. D, both A and C. The answer is D, both A and C. The associate broker can only receive current compensation from his or her employing broker. The associate can also receive compensation from a previous employer for transactions that closed after the associate transferred his or her license to a new brokerage firm. How long must an independent broker keep her transaction files? A. 7 years. B. Must be sent to the Commission for Safekeeping. C. 4 years. D. Must be kept 30 years after closing. The answer is C. 4 years. All independent brokers and employing brokers must retain transaction files for 4 years. Question 10. If a seller wants to counter an offer, what does the seller sign? A. The offer and the counter proposal. B. Just a counter proposal. C. Just the offer. D. Sign the offer and initial the counter. The answer is B. Just the counter proposal. To counter an offer, the seller initials the offer and checks the box for countered. The seller then signs the counter proposal and sends it back to the buyer. If the seller signs the offer, then a contract is created. Bonus question. The death of either the employing broker or the buyer will terminate which contract? A. The exclusive right to sell listing agreement. B. The contract to buy and sell real estate. C. The change of status form. D. The exclusive right to buy contract. The answer is D. The exclusive right to buy contract. The exclusive right to buy contract is a personal services contract or an employment agreement. If one of the parties is deceased, there is either no one to serve or no one to render the service. However, if one of the parties is deceased in the contract to buy and sell real estate, the contract survives to probate. Question 11. Who is responsible to investigate the property's inclusion in a special taxing district? A. Seller. B. Buyer. C. Seller's broker. D. Buyer's broker. The answer is B. The buyer. The contract to buy and sell real estate states that it is the buyer's responsibility to investigate. Question 12. Buyer S has signed a purchase agreement. Seller Q has signed the agreement and communicated acceptance to S. Which of the following is true of buyer S's interest? A. S holds equitable title. B. S holds legal title. C. S holds abstract title. D. S holds certificate of title. The answer is A. S holds equitable title. Question 13. When a buyer and a seller enter a purchase agreement, contract of sale, the legal remedy that each has to force the other party to consummate the transaction is A. Liquidated damages. B. Actual damages. C. Specific performance. D. Unilateral rescission. Answer is C. Specific performance. Question 14. When a lender refuses to make loans in a given neighborhood populated by racial minorities, it is an example of A. Steering. B. Blockbusting. C. Credit deviation. D. Redlining. The answer is redlining. Question 15. Errors and omissions professional liability insurance is required. A. For every active Colorado licensee. B. For active and inactive Colorado licensees. C. For the employing broker only. D. For resident Colorado brokers only. The answer is A. For every active Colorado licensee. Question 16. Salesperson L-P placed the following order with the telephone company. List my name in the directory under the heading Real Estate as L-P, Real Estate Salesperson, Residential Property My Specialty. L-P is also required to include A. Her license number. B. The expiration date of her license. C. Her street address. D. The name of her employing broker. The answer is D. The name of her employing broker. Question 17. A broker received an earnest money deposit from a buyer. Under Colorado law, the broker should A. Open a special separate escrow account that will contain funds for the transaction only, separate from funds received in any other transaction. B. Deposit the money in an existing special non-interest-bearing escrow account in which all earnest money received from buyers may be held at the same time. C. Immediately deposit the earnest money in the broker's personal interest-bearing checking or savings account. D. Hold the earnest money deposit in a secure place in the broker's real estate brokerage office until the offer is accepted. Answer: D. Hold the earnest money deposit in a secure place in the broker's real estate brokerage office until the offer is accepted. Question 18. If a broker establishes an account to hold money belonging to others, which of the following is correct? A. All checks, deposit slips, and bank statements must include the word escrow or trust as part of the account name. B. The names of all authorized signers must be on the checks. C. The account cannot be in the same bank as a broker's personal account. D. An individual account is required for each transaction. Answer: A. All checks, deposit slips, and bank statements must include the word escrow or trust as part of the account name. Question 19. What does the exclusive right to sell listing form state about the seller's property disclosure form? A. Seller is required by law to provide this form to every buyer. B. Seller may refuse to provide the disclosure and avoid disclosure of material defects. C. Seller may check the as-is box and make the buyer responsible to find any defects. D. Seller may decline to provide this disclosure but must still disclose latent material defects. The answer is D. Seller may decline to provide the disclosure but must still disclose latent material defects. Question 20. Real estate practice in Colorado assumes that which type of deed will convey residential property unless otherwise provided? A. General warranty deed. B. Special warranty deed. C. Bargain and sale deed. D. Quitclaim deed. The answer is A. General warranty deed. Question 21. In Colorado, real estate commissions are A. Set by law. B. Set by the Real Estate Commission. C. Determined by local groups of brokers. D. Negotiable between the broker and the seller or buyer. The answer is D. Negotiable between the broker and the seller or buyer. (22) According to the Commission-approved exclusive right to sell listing contract, A. Broker's compensation is set by the Commission for certain areas. B. A broker's compensation is established by the brokerage firm. C. Broker's compensation is set by the local brokers as a standard fee. D. A broker's compensation is established by the Board of Realtors. The answer is B. A broker's compensation is established by the brokerage firm. Question 23. Associate Broker Harry, an agent for ABZ Realty, has listed a property. Associate Broker Zuma, an agent for Greater Realty, later sells a property. The contractual right to collect a commission from the seller belongs to A. Associate Broker Harry, B. ABZ Realty, C. Associate Broker Zuma, D. Greater Realty. The answer is B. ABZ Realty. The Associate Broker Harry is designated to represent the seller for the ABZ brokerage firm, and all commissions are owed to the brokerage firm and then paid per the independent contractor's agreement to the Associate Broker. Question 24. The closing is April 1st and the HOA monthly assessment of $200 has been paid by the seller. Who owes whom and how much? A. 667, debit the buyer, credit the seller. B. 667, credit the buyer, debit the seller. C. There is no proration, the buyer owes the seller $200. D. There is no proration, seller owes buyer $200. The answer is C. There is no proration. Buyer owes seller $200. Question 25. The water and sewer bill, $44, was paid by the seller. The bill covered January 1st through February 28th. The closing is set for February 27th. Who owes whom and how much do they owe? A. $1.49, debit the buyer, credit the seller. B. $1.49, credit the seller, debit the buyer. C. 42.51, credit the seller, debit the buyer. D. 42.51, debit the seller, credit the buyer. The answer is $1.49, debit the buyer, credit the seller. Buyer owned 2 days, buyer owes seller 2 days. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful in your preparation for the Colorado Real Estate exam. Please like and follow for more like it to help you pass that exam.